Dr. Christian Petz, but I have to replace him. I would like to talk a little bit about what are giants doing in smart home market and how do they try to change it and how do they change it. So by giants, of course, I mean Apple, Google, and Samsung. And let's start first by probably the most known and resonant initiative by Apple, who announced Apple HomeKit. Apple HomeKit was announced 2 years ago in 2014, and as all the initiatives by Apple, they were immediately taken over by many journalists, like everything will change once Apple in the game. Hopefully it was many times like that in computer industry when Apple really changed a lot, but how was it in smart homes? Let's first understand what is HomeKit, what Apple proposed to customers. Apple HomeKit is a technology that allows iPhone and iPad users to easily access their smart home devices and control them from their phones. The devices, they had not to be from Apple, they can be from any other manufacturers, but they have to be compatible and registered and easily controlled from iOS. So iOS is a middleware between devices and user, making it simple for user to understand and control devices. At the same time, of course, Apple provided full integration of HomeKit features into their other solutions like Siri, voice control and voice recognition. And the idea of Apple was to bring some ratio to the smart home market, to home automation market, to centralize the control and unify the style, how device should look like, how device should be controlled, and at the same time bring more better, more consistent experience to the end user. Immediately after being announced, many companies, many journalists started to cry about HomeKit, how it's good, how it will change the world. And if you look at the Google search results from two years ago, you will immediately see that the only and the best smart home technology is already here from Apple, and that Apple Home Gateway might already be in your house, and it's already changing smart home market. And that was right after the announcement of the technology. And since we have to understand what HomeKit is not, to look a little bit further. So HomeKit is clearly not a wireless technology, neither a wire technology. So it's not a technology to control devices themselves. They reuse the existing infrastructure from different manufacturers, from different alliances and protocols to control devices. At the same time, it's not a breakthrough in user application, and even more, Apple for 2 years have never provided any application to user, and relied on third party to write customized applications, and that means all these applications, they looked pretty like other applications on the market. Nothing new, nothing original, and that's not a breakthrough in gateways, because essentially Apple had not provided any gateway initially, and they had an idea to use their product called Apple TV to make out of it a smart home gateway, but this is still not done yet. If we talk about devices support, since we had Wi-Fi and Bluetooth devices supported, some devices supported, and some technologies like Z-Wave and Zigbee, they also tried to be supported transparently in Apple HomeKit, but still this is not really common, and there are many reasons for this. So one of the reason is that they have no clear definition of what Apple HomeKit should be. That's why they change their mind from time to time. For example, they have made MFI mandatory for manufacturers. MFI is made for iPhone certification. So initially, when Apple HomeKit was released, anyone was able to take Apple HomeKit and integrate it. Then they decided, no, a company should put a special MFI chip on it, on the device, and make a special authorization of the device in Apple device. Then, if you don't use it, that chip, iOS warns you that the device is not certified by Apple and you might have problems using it. Then they have changed their mind again to cancel it and then again to enable it, etc., etc. At the same time, Apple HomeKit provides a definition of every type of devices, like lights, switches, thermostats, and these definitions changed several times since the original publication. And that was also a big problem for companies, third-party companies doing support of HomeKit, because they had to redo everything from scratch, and that was really frustrating for them. And finally, some of them just stopped integrating HomeKit and evolved it just because it was no commercial gain and at the same time quite a lot of headache. And finally, this summer, Apple announced their own application because they realized that third-party do not do it like they want. Third-party really don't do it. So there are only few applications supporting HomeKit right now from third-party, and finally Apple have made their own application. But if you go to the trade show, you will always see a lot of different logos. All these guys are supposed to support HomeKit. At the same time, if you go to some markets, internet shops, you see that there are only a dozen of devices supporting HomeKit. Plenty of logos, but only few devices. And from that, we learn that being a big brand, when you go to the market, that do not guarantee you a success, because just announcing a new technology is way easier than bringing a device to the market and really make it good for the user so that they become your customers. Another question that people ask is, what can't I do with current technology and I can do with Apple HomeKit? And the answer currently is nothing. So why to choose Apple HomeKit if you can do it with other technologies, existing technologies? And yes, smart home market is not so straightforward and not so easy to just come on it and change the full world. It's pretty complex, and you have to make pretty complex solutions, and simplifications do not already mean better for a user. Another technology very resonant and very known is Thread, or as we call it, Google Thread, because it was initially proposed by Google. Google chose a little bit another way to go. They decided to make a wireless technology for smart home devices. So they have based their solution on the lower layer is a pretty well-known standard. The same standard as ZigBee was based on, and on top they have made their own network and transport layer called Google Thread, and it was supposed to be the transport for HomeKit, for AllJoyn, for other wireless technology agnostic standards. And even they decided to change ZigBee to improve ZigBee and finally become a standard for ZigBee, because they are based on the same lower layer. It was also announced 2 years ago and was initially proposed by Nest Lab, acquired by Google, and then supported by main players on the market like Samsung, ARM, and Freescale. And it got a name 6LoWPAN on steroids because it reused the infrastructure of 6LoWPAN, which is pretty old technology. It was standardized 10 years ago, and it provides a very good mapping from IP world, from IPv6 to that wireless technology, that made it pretty attractive for developers. And of course, that was interesting for all the for the full industry, that now Google will change the world, and unfortunately there are still no supported devices on the market that you can easily buy, only some development kits. Then different technologies like Zigbee that are very close to Google Thread, they started to do common work to improve the technology. So of course Zigbee and Thread, they tried to play, to unify together to make the smart home the only and the best smart home technology. And of course there were a lot of talks about that Google Thread and Zigbee will change. And if we look, it was a year ago, and since nothing has changed, and you have probably certainly nothing heard about that since. And this reminds a little bit, if we talk about Zigbee, there were quite a lot of profiles, so it was Zigbee 1, Zigbee 1.1, Zigbee 1.2, etc., etc. And now the final and the ultimate and the last one, Zigbee 3.0, that will certainly now change the world. And that reminds a little bit the how to play the video. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm a Mac. And I'm a PC. Hey, Mac, did you hear the good news? Windows 7 is out, and it's not going to have any of the problems my last operating system had. Trust me.
I feel like I've heard this before, PC.
What? Windows Vista's here, and it's not going to have any of the problems that Windows XP had. It's not going to have any of the problems that Windows ME had. It's not going to have any of the problems that Windows 98 had. It's not going to have any of the problems Windows 95 had. It's not going to have any of the problems Windows 2 had. Trust me. This time it's going to be different. Trust me.
That was pretty known advertising by Mac that shows that Windows is changing. Windows 1, Windows 2, Windows 2000, Windows NT, etc., etc. And all the times they say, now it's the ultimate, now it's the best, now it's the one. And of course, nothing has changed since. This shows how the promises are wrong. And there are way more different alliances to come. So we know AllJoyn, supported by Microsoft. We see quite a lot of new alliances arising, and they all promise to be the one, the technology to change the smart home, to change the world, because they will unify everything and do it in the best way. But we are here. None of these technologies are here, and that's certainly because there are reasons for that. And if we talk about other technologies, so we represent Z-Wave here, and Z-Wave, they have a little bit different style of doing promises and working with customers. If you look on the devices presented here, the two left devices, there's our devices from 11 years ago. They look pretty like the mobile from 11 years ago, ugly, but these are devices that were on the market for quite some time, and they still work. If we talk about Z-Wave now, it has changed quite a lot. It has evolved, keeping backward compatibility and never promising that this time it will be the better. Just throw away everything that you have done previously and took the one from the technology from now, and that will be the best. Instead, they evolved the protocol to always make it better, 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 but still keeping the compatibility of all devices, keeping the business and not killing the business of companies who have acquired the technology of previous generation, of Z-Wave of previous generation. And that allows now to have more than 1,500 interoperable devices and about 5 devices a week arising every day supporting that technology. It works through all the whole world, Europe, US, of course, Asia, and there are more than 40 million devices made since the beginning of Z-Wave technology, and all this thanks to the step-by-step way of evolution and never promising the ultimate, the next ultimate protocol revision. And from last news, last week it was announced that the interoperability specifications will become open source, so anyone will be able to make their devices according to the latest technologies based on Z-Wave, and they will be interoperable with all existing devices, even the devices I have shown in the beginning, early from 11 years ago. So as a conclusion, never depend on other people's promises, and especially giants, because sometimes they think they can change the world, but they cannot, just because the most important here is not to promise, but to bring devices to customers, to make them real, and to sell them. Thank you. So, any questions? Yeah. Please take a micro.
Tiny detail in one of your charts. You mentioned an abbreviation which was, I think, MFI.
MFI, yeah.
Yeah. What's it?
MFI is an abbreviation by Apple, made for iPhone initially. Then, of course, it was made for iPad and iPhone. It's a sort of certification that allows you to sell devices and write that they are suitable for iPhone or iPad. For example, if you take Belkin accessories for iPhone, they are certified and they pay some fee to Apple to have that logo on their products. And initially, Apple HomeKit, they have not supposed to have any certification by Apple, so you just make a device compatible with Apple HomeKit. And then they decided that they should control that market, they should influence on it, and they decided, okay, how can we do it? We have to certify, and for this we have to even push companies to buy a special chip, MFI chip, that have a public key for authentication in iOS systems. And then they decided they don't need to do it because it was too hard for to attract manufacturers. That was really scaring manufacturers from coming to Apple HomeKit, and they have changed their minds since several times.